Hello, Sappy Nirvana back. Um, I decided I need to finish out the uh, London places to see and all that stuff. So I wanted to do a brief one on some of the places that aren't exactly your go-to on your tour map. So first off, as you're seeing the picture here, this is the former Battersea power plant. It is now converted into a high-scale shopping mall, but most people in the know, if you want to say in the know, um, know Battersea because it appeared on the album cover of Animals by Pink Floyd. The only thing missing in this picture is a giant floating pig. Now we're going to flip over, and when you think going to London, probably not the first thing that would go into your mind is, I'm going to go to cemeteries. But if you're looking for to touch on both history and celebrity, cemeteries is the way to go. Now, this particular one is Golders Green. It is a crematory and also a cemetery, but and mausoleum. Now, a lot of I shouldn't say a lot of, some of your bigger names are in the columbariums, as is Bram Stoker. If the name doesn't ring a bell, he is known for writing one of the most famous science fiction novels in the horror genre, namely Dracula. Also located here is Sigmund Freud, Peter Sellers, um, and many others notable names. The Bram Stoker, again, the columbarium, you do need to have a guide take you in because they are locked. Now, they do have gardens out. Um, that's where you're going to find like Mark Bolan or Peter Sellers. And most of the people whose remains have been placed out in the gardens simply have a rosebush there and a small marker. But once again, if you're looking for celebrity, cemeteries are kind of the way to go. Because the likelihood you're going to actually see a celebrity whilst amongst in London is, I say, on the rare side, unless you actually stumble upon a movie premiere, as I did the last time I was in London. The movie premiere for Black Adam was going on, and I actually do have some pictures of The Rock, but I do not have them on these slides. Now we're going to move to Highgate Cemetery. It is one of the largest cemeteries in London, if not the largest. I'm thinking it's the largest, but I don't want to misquote myself. Now, sorry. The Highgate is separated into the east and west side. The east side there is no fee to get into. West side there is a donation of, I believe it's £5 to get into. Right here you're seeing the monument of Karl Marx. This is not the original monument. There is his wife actually died before him, and there was a smaller flat stone where her remains was at, and when he was initially buried, that was where he was buried. He was later reinterred into the grave that you're currently seeing on the screen. Some other notable names this is on the west side. Some other notable, I hope I've got the east and west side. It's kind of confusing from um, when you're trying to orientate yourself. But I'm pretty sure this is on the west side. So anyhow, other luminaries that you uh, might know that are buried in that same section of the cemetery, same side. You have Douglas Adams. You have Malcolm McLaren. Um, did not know this beforehand, and it's not really a celebrity, but akin of celebrity. Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart, if you're into his fandom, his parents are actually buried there, and I actually have pictures of the stone. Did not realize that's who it was until we ran into a gentleman from the area when we were leaving, and he was telling us bits and pieces about so and so was buried here and that. Now, if you go onto the other side, which should be the east side, um, this name, if you read it, will not generally ring a bell. But this is, and some people after I say it will be like, I can't believe such a simple grave for someone who was relatively famous. This is the grave of George Michael. Um, now, there's several luminaries on this side of the cemetery who are buried there, including Michael Faraday, Bob Hoskins. I believe Ian Holm is buried there, but Hoskins and Holm are in a private section that you cannot actually access. Um, Alfred Tennyson's mother is buried here, and a lot of other luminaries. Now, what you're gonna see here is when you go to I won't say all the cemeteries, but it's noticeable compared to what you would say in the United States that nature has reclaimed a lot of the cemeteries. Um, some people will say, well, they just let them go, but it's kind of like, after so long, nature just reclaims, and more or less, your more famous graves are going to be easier to find, and they're more well kept. But some of the older ones, some of your regular citizens of London, are in areas like this that are overgrown, not, I won't say neglected, but not as well taken care of as some of your more luminary persons. Now, here's of interest is across the city you'll see a lot of these plaques, and most of them are blue plaques, and they'll state things of historical importance. Here you're seeing outside of the former Apple Records headquarters, where the Beatles played the last live performance on the rooftop. That you have seen in the Peter Jackson documentary. You'll see these throughout the city, and it'll tell you things about where people were born, where people had died, where people had lived, things that had happened in this area. And some people will just say, well, that's just kind of stupid because you're just looking at a brick wall. But I just think, it's kind of, I'm a history person, so I just like historical references. Like this is outside of a location, and it's actually not that far from where the Beatles one is. It's a street over. Basically, if you cut through those buildings, you can see where that, and it's like it all it is just a doorway to the buildings, but it appears on a iconic album. So, and then this is when I was walking through Soho, and Trident Studios is not there any longer. But it's kind of, like I said, it's pretty interesting, at least for me, for historical references to know where uh, things happened. I'm obviously big into rock music. I'm a big Bowie fan. And so, things like this really kind of interest me. And I had actually discussed with my friend about I wouldn't mind, taking a day or two. But yeah, I mean, you could take forever because there's that many plaques within London, and you can find websites that actually mark them so you can uh, make sure you find certain ones. But just take a couple of days and just do like a uh, treasure hunt, and all you're doing is looking for the blue plaques. So it's just something offbeat that maybe your normal person to London wouldn't be like, oh, I'm gonna go look at a blue plaque. Now this is kind of really on offbeat, and uh, this is for my friend. This is one thing that she just didn't forgive me for saying this, but she wouldn't shut up about wanting to go see. So when I come back to London in October, I made sure that this is one of those things that I wanted to make sure that we did, so she would have the opportunity to say that she's seen. Now this is up in the northern part of um, London. It's Chingford, and it is kind of really out of the way, and it's a long bus ride to get up there. So, but Ronnie and Reggie were notorious London gangsters, and there's been a couple movies, including one with Tom Hardy. But there are a couple of guys who either you have a serious fascination and love for, or you have a serious hatred for. So this is at the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. This was part of the Olympic. Uh, this is built specifically for when the Olympics happened. This is the Selamator. I believe that's how you pronounce it. So the fun thing is if you see these spirals here, that is actually a no. Those are the stairs, I think. Well, maybe not. Maybe there is a slide that goes all the way down, and you can actually have a GoPro on, and it'll record you all the way down. And off to the side, you can actually rappel off the side. I did neither because I do not like heights, and I am not exactly the smallest person in the world. I'm not just saying that from height wise because I am 6'5", but I am a little chonk. So I figured if I tried to go down the slide, I would probably get my fat ass stuck somewhere in there. So once again, one of those out of the way things, and this is a 2-part thing. This is just a little bit north of Bethnal Green. It's I'd say maybe a mile north of where I stayed in Bethnal Green. And funny enough, when I stayed at Bethnal Green, are you tired of me saying it? But when I stayed there, the day I chose to go there, they were closed, and then I didn't end up going there when I was in London in May. So I made sure that I made a high priority that I wanted to go there in October. Now, when I say this is a 2-part, the main part of this, if you want to say the main part, the Last Tuesday Society, is actually an absinthe bar. Now, ever since I've seen a little film called From Hell, based on a book, and Absinthe played a big part, plus the historical aspect of absinthe with our artists and stuff drinking it and supposedly hallucinating and everything. The mystique around it. Absinthe is one of those things that I've always wanted to try. For a long time in the United States, it was illegal. But thankfully, that has changed. But up to that point, I had never tried absinthe, so this was my opportunity to try the Green Fairy, and I did. But the second part is, you'll see above that, it says the Victor Wynne Museum of Curiosity, Fine Art, and Natural History. In the basement, in this really narrow stairwell that you go down into the basement, is this really oddball museum of some of the weirdest crap you'll ever find. And for some, I say it's part morbid curiosity, part laugh, part someone had a crazy idea and went with it, and there it goes. A little out of your way from London, but I'm going to tell you right now, both for if you've ever been curious about trying absinthe and you like the weird shit, this is definitely a place to check out. Oh, sorry. This is Brompton Cemetery. Brompton and Highgate are two of the Magnificent Seven cemeteries. There are 7 cemeteries within London, which are considered the Magnificent Seven, which are the 7 most important cemeteries in London. Now, this picture here is the former grave of a Native American who traveled in the Wild West show and actually had died in England when he was over there. And for years he was buried there, and finally his relatives had requested that he be reinterred back in the States, and he was. Now, if you're looking, you're like, that's kind of weird looking. That is sagebrush, which I would say is probably not really that native to London, but I thought it was kind of neat. This is Windsor Castle. Once again, kind of out of the way. To get there from where I was staying in London, I had to go clear across London for one. But from Paddington Station, you have to take a train to this town. I wish I could remember what the Eton, I think, where Eton College is at. But you have to take a train from Paddington Station in London to just north of Windsor, and then you find a bus that takes you into Windsor. Now, cool factor is you get to see a historical residence of the kings and queens. The kind of suck factor is here, if you can take pictures of stuff from the outside, but once you enter inside any of the buildings, the residence or the chapel, photography is not allowed now. I say that, but you still had idiots taking pictures. When I was there in October, obviously Elizabeth had passed away, and by that time she was already interred, and the chapel was reopened. And I got to see Queen Elizabeth's final resting place next to Philip. Also the resting place of Henry VIII and many other monarchs. Now, originally, most of all the monarchs were buried or interred into Westminster Abbey. That eventually changed, and they started being interred into Windsor Castle within St. George's Abbey. Now, the exception on that is Frogmore, which is an estate off of Windsor Castle, and that's where Victoria and some other dignitaries are buried. So that ends our little picture tour here. Went a little bit longer than I was anticipating, but I wouldn't say like Windsor's weird and out, but it is kind of out of the way. It's I could have included Wembley. I have a far away shot of Wembley from when I was on Shard, but I didn't actually go to Wembley, so I didn't want to include that picture. So this was going to wrap up the place to see in London. So I hope you enjoyed the series, and it gives you some ideas that when you go to London, things to do. Until next time, this is Sabin Nirvana saying bye.